Well, people, it's official. Two-time heavyweight champion of the world Anthony Joshua is going to be taking on YouTuber turned exhibition boxer, is that what we can call him? Jake Paul, in a professionally sanctioned heavyweight fight. In this video, I'm going to be looking to answer the following question. Can this fight harm either man beyond repair? And when I say harm, I mean harm in two completely different ways. For Anthony Joshua, taking this fight creates a very real risk to his legacy, his public PR, and for any future potential ambitions that he has left in the sport of boxing. For Jake Paul, the risk is entirely to his health. Because reputationally, no one's going to criticize Jake Paul for taking this fight. In fact, many would jump at the opportunity. But in this video, we have to ask the question, the very real question, not can Jake Paul win, but can Jake Paul get out of there in one piece with his health, still breathing? I get into it all in this video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. I hope you're all doing incredibly well, and I'm genuinely surprised that I'm making this video. I resisted making one when the fight was initially rumored because I didn't think it was going to happen. I genuinely just thought that Jake Paul was using Joshua's name to create some hype and buzz, as we've seen a few times before. But after having been scheduled to fight Gervonta Tank Davis, who is a 135-pound champion, he's now going to be fighting Anthony Joshua, who regularly weighs in at over 250 pounds. Quite the difference. Right before I jump into breaking this down, don't forget to bang a like on the video if indeed you do like it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new, and get your comment in the comment section below. What the hell do you make of this matchup? Now, to begin, I want to talk about why I've described this as a risky fight for Anthony Joshua. This is someone who is an Olympic heavyweight gold medalist, a two-time heavyweight champion of the world. His only losses have come at the very highest level in the sport, with wins over the likes of Klitschko, Povetkin, Parker, Dillian White, Andy Ruiz Jr. He's been one of the best heavyweights of this era, and he'll probably end up being a Hall of Fame fighter. He has been a bona fide elite heavyweight, and whilst he is coming towards the end of his career, at 36 years old, compared with what Jake Paul's been competing with in the past, he's basically a spring chicken. Now, to contrast this against what Jake Paul has done in the boxing ring, I'm going to talk to you about what is actually relevant. Not fighting MMA fighters, especially old and retired ones, but what's he done against actual boxers? Well, the one time that he fought someone in Tommy Fury who's not even really a full-time professional boxer, he lost. Tommy Fury is also naturally a weight class smaller than Jake Paul, but he couldn't get the win on that night. He's also had wins against a few journeymen, who I think even they had been fairly inactive when they fought Jake Paul, having had years out of the ring. And most recently, he beat a 47-year-old, completely depleted Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who won a middleweight title back in the day, but since then has been in and out of rehab and has never really been fit and in shape for a fight. Go and watch that one. The guy doesn't throw a punch for the entire fight, and when he eventually does, he actually looks like he could have caused Jake Paul some issues. He has 0 wins against any ranked fighters. The only heavyweight he's actually fought was Mike Tyson, who himself was in his 50s, had had a stomach ulcer only months before the fight, was completely shot to pieces, he was an old man, and now for the first time he's fighting the fighter who has been the most recently active boxer in his career, who I suppose has achieved the same level as Mike Tyson, but many, many decades apart, and is also by far the biggest man he's faced. By far. He won't have the size advantage on this occasion, although we will talk about size because that is important in this video. So when I say this is a risk to Anthony Joshua, it isn't a risk to him in terms of his health or anything like that, because Anthony Joshua has been a fantastic boxer and I would assume still has absolutely plenty left. But the reason this creates immense risk for Joshua is because even if Joshua wins this fight, it has to be perfect. There cannot be a moment of hesitation from Anthony Joshua. He can't look mentally shot. He can't take a punch, really. If he takes a big punch from Jake Paul, if he gets hurt in any way by Jake Paul, if he doesn't absolutely ice Jake Paul within a few rounds of this 8-round scheduled bout, well then it really affects his credibility. All the things that have ever been said about him, he's a hype job, he's been coddled. He didn't really want to fight Deontay Wilder when they were both in their prime. He's just a big bodybuilder, as Tyson Fury loves to put it. Anyone who's ever doubted him will have absolute ability to do so. And so the fact that this is actually a sanctioned fight, it tells me that Anthony Joshua cannot be going in there, or will not go in there and try to carry Jake Paul. Otherwise, it might as well just be an exhibition. If he does go in there and carry Jake Paul, my fear for him is that most people will not be aware that that's what he's doing. Reputationally, it would just cause serious damage. And like I say, I think the only way he comes out of this unscathed, reputationally, is by going in there and securing a clean knockout. Anthony Joshua can't do anything to boost how people view him as a boxer in this fight. All it can do is damage him unless he's punch perfect. He's fighting someone who realistically has nothing to lose and absolutely everything to gain. And that in itself can be dangerous. It can be risky. And given that Jake Paul has achieved so little, given that Anthony Joshua wants to remain relevant and credible, so it seems, because he has a couple of potentially big fights left, especially against Tyson Fury, why is he doing this? He doesn't want to jeopardize that, surely. Well, I can tell you exactly how I think he has rationalized this in his mind. The first thing is that he's going to get paid an absolute shed load of money. Around 50 million is what we're hearing. I've heard 50 million pounds, 50 million USD, but whatever happens, it's a significant amount of cash. Possibly will be one of his highest ever career paydays, possibly similar to what he'd make for a Tyson Fury fight. But for what? Like 1% of the risk? I don't know. I don't know how to put it in numerical form, but it's not difficult for him. And it's something Eddie Hearn said about Anthony Joshua. He said he wanted to give him a run out against a journeyman heavyweight, just someone he could get in there with, wrap his hands, go through the motions, go in and get a knockout, shake off some of the ring rust, and, just do all that before the end of the year. And so if that was the mindset for Anthony Joshua anyway, then I can totally see how he's rationalized this one in his head. He's gone, well, I was going to fight someone who was a nobody anyway. Jake Paul is of a comparable level to a journeyman heavyweight boxer potentially, so I might as well go in there and get paid a shed load of cash at the same time. And I suppose you could argue that the profile boost he'll receive from destroying Jake Paul, which is what I assume he believes he will do, it could be so much that actually it makes him even more bankable for the rest of his career. So yeah, I get it. I understand why Anthony Joshua is doing this. Does it mean I like it? I'll talk about my personal opinion before the end of this video. And I want to go into the next part of this video now, which is, why is Jake Paul doing this? Because yes, there's money, but Jake Paul's been making plenty of money. He was going to make plenty of money to fight Gervonta Davis, who is a much, much smaller man than Anthony Joshua, who Jake Paul had a bona fide chance of beating because of the size difference. And when there is such a massive mismatch in terms of ability, that question simply must be asked. Why is Jake Paul doing this? Well, I think it's because he genuinely believes there is a chance he can win this. I think he's calculated everything about Anthony Joshua's circumstances and he's gone, yeah, I actually think I can do this. I can leapfrog so many years of having to build and go through the ranks and do all that stuff by beating a shop-worn Anthony Joshua. And what are the factors in Jake Paul believing this? Well, it would be firstly that AJ received a loss in his most recent fight. Anthony Joshua's not been in the ring since September 2024, so over a year by the time him and Jake Paul get in the ring together. It will have been around 15 months. It was the manner of Joshua's loss where he looked terrible. He looked like a fighter that was well past his best. His timing wasn't there. He even looked a little bit chinny, dare I say. I mean, I still think he's got a good chin. The shot he took from Dubois was absolutely massive and would have knocked down many heavyweights. And he showed decent powers of recovery to get up and struggle through for as long as he did before his over-aggression and miscalculation with the type of shots he was using got him knocked out by Dubois. But if you're deluded enough like Jake Paul, then perhaps you look at that and go, he landed a massive right hand on Joshua's chin. Why can't I do the same? I believe myself to be a very big puncher. And it's that old saying, isn't it? You shoot for the stars, you might at least land on the moon. And I think that's kind of why Jake Paul's maybe got to where he is in life, because he does have too much self-confidence. He does believe in himself. Well, on this occasion, I believe to a fault. So there's the loss to Dubois that will make Jake Paul more confident, but also he'll be feeling that way because of the manner of Anthony Joshua's reaction to his last KO loss, which was against Andy Ruiz Jr. This was the fight that completely disrupted Anthony Joshua's flow as a heavyweight champion. Yes, he won it back in the rematch against Ruiz Jr., where Ruiz Jr. came in quite a lot heavier. But in that first fight, Ruiz Jr. caught Joshua with a hook that shook him to his boots. He never really recovered. He went for the rest of the fight, sort of like it was a weird dream. And he never looked himself in there again for the rest of it, eventually taking the loss and giving up his belts. And it shattered that illusion of invincibility around him. And from then on out, he definitely struggled with his identity in the ring. You never really could tell if he was trying to box or if he was trying to be a destroyer. He looked like someone who was gun shy, and I don't think he ever really shook that after that first Andy Ruiz loss. I feel like he was getting much closer to it, and the best he ever looked was in the second Usyk fight when he took his third loss of his career. But when his fourth loss came against Daniel Dubois, that was the most emphatic knockout loss that he has taken at any point in his life. And I think Jake Paul would be banking on the fact that mentally he may not have gotten over that. And look, it's something I've been told by people that are around Anthony Joshua, that this guy psychologically needs everything to be perfect. He needs everything to be right. And I've felt that myself from him. He has seemed off at times walking to the ring. He's seemed that he's mentally not all there. And I just wonder what tricks MVP promotions will try and play on the night to try and get Joshua feeling uncomfortable. It seems unthinkable that Joshua's mindset wouldn't be strong enough to overcome a Jake Paul, but perhaps there is enough of a weakness there that can be exploited that Jake Paul might actually be able to do something in this fight. I mean, I just can't believe that that's true, but that's maybe what Jake Paul is thinking, I'm trying to say. I'm trying to get inside Jake Paul's mind right now, because this whole thing seems so crazy to me. And speaking of AJ's mindset and the Andrew Ruiz Jr. loss, that was his first fight in America, his American debut. And I do believe that there is a culture in America where they think that Anthony Joshua has been a bit of a pretender. They've underrated him and don't believe he is a great boxer. And I just wonder if this sort of blatant disrespect from Jake Paul in taking this fight, he clearly doesn't really believe in Anthony Joshua's ability that highly if he's gone and done this. I wonder if it's an extension of the sort of cultural zeitgeist in America that this is just how they feel about AJ. They don't really think he's that great. They never did think he was that great. The whole idea that he avoided Wilder for years, that he never took that fight and he would have got completely destroyed if he had fought Wilder. The fact that Fury went over there and then he sort of engaged with Wilder and they sort of tried to completely freeze out Joshua, which they managed to do for a while. Yeah, that whole thing, I do think that caused Joshua some reputational damage in the States, and I just wonder if this is part of that. And, Jake Paul says a lot of stuff, and he says a lot of stuff to hype up his own ability without any substance or actually doing anything in the ring. But when he said this on a podcast...
I know my boundaries. I want to fight Anthony Joshua, exclusive, because I know that I will fucking beat Anthony Joshua's ass. Yeah, he doesn't have a chin, and he has no skill, and he's stiff. And I love you, Anthony. We're friends, all this shit, but I want to fight you.
I mean... Maybe he really believes all these things. And if he does, I think some of the things I've just mentioned are certainly at play in his psychology in approaching this Joshua fight. Because we have to be honest, look, nothing that Jake Paul has achieved so far in a boxing ring justifies his belief that he could beat an Anthony Joshua. And perhaps it's that old adage of, oh, I'd take a punch to the face from Anthony Joshua for £1 million, or 50 quid if you're someone else. Maybe that's all this is. Maybe Jake Paul doesn't actually have any belief he can win. And maybe he is just like, yeah, it's a massive amount of money. I don't think my reputation's that badly affected by it if I do lose, because at least people say I'm brave and I've stepped up and you're a bit mad, but whatever. And I'll still be able to go and fight MMA fighters and all that sort of thing. I think he well knows that he could lose against someone much worse than Joshua, so why not just do it? At the same time, yeah, it's entirely possible he also thinks he could genuinely put a dent in Joshua and win this fight, which is mad. The other factors are the circumstances of the fight. It's an 8-rounder, so Jake may even be thinking, well, maybe I can out-jab him for a rounds and run around. I'm quicker than him, potentially. Maybe my gas tank's better than his. Potentially, I can do this for 8 rounds. I'm going to say now I don't think his gas tank is better than AJ's, and there's another reason why that's definitely not going to be the case, in my opinion. But Jake might be telling himself this. Or worst-case scenario, I am getting hurt. He is winning the fight, but I can run around for 8 rounds, make AJ look silly. I can frustrate him, get through it on a points loss, which would be a giant win for Jake and a massive, massive loss for AJ if he just won this fight on points. The other thing is the fact that they're putting in a weight clause in this fight. So there is a maximum weight limit for the fight. Apparently, Anthony Joshua can't weigh more than 245 pounds. And just to give you context for what that means, Anthony Joshua's previous weights, Daniel Dubois, he was 252 and a quarter, Francis Ngannou, 252 and a half, Wallen, 251, Helenius, 250, Franklin, 255. And then the Usyk fights, he was in the 240, so 240 and 244 and a half. Basically, it's a weight that Anthony Joshua hasn't been in 3 years. But also, Anthony Joshua, as a heavyweight, has never had to cut weight. So even if he is in the 250s, let's say he's the same weight as Ngannou, it's a 7-pound water cut, which isn't really much when you're a man as big as Anthony Joshua, if indeed that's what he decides to do, rather than just taking the weight off anyway. And if he does decide to take the weight off anyway, what we'll see is someone who's got better stamina. But again, I think this gives Jake Paul confidence. He thinks, well, I'll come in probably around about 220. He was 227 when he fought Mike Tyson, so he'll probably be thinking, well, it might only be a 20-pound weight difference, which is not insurmountable. I'm talking as if I'm Jake Paul right now, just to reiterate. And if he does decide to cut water weight, which maybe they know Joshua's pretty big right now because he's not been fighting for a while. I think he's been in some sort of training camp. But another factor is Joshua's coming off the back of an elbow surgery. He had an issue for a while that kept him out of the ring. So all that combined, he might be thinking, yeah, he's going to have to cut some weight. He might be a little bit weak. Maybe the drain of water from his body in terms of making this weight will make him more chinny. If he's lighter, he might be a bit more chinny, will be closer in size, etc., etc. The point is, I can see a world in which there's a few factors that Jake Paul could take and run with. Plus, again, he's getting paid a shed load of cash. But moving into the next part of this video, this is the question that we really have to ask. And I said it at the beginning of this video. This isn't, for me, for Jake Paul, isn't really about, for me, why has he taken this fight? It's not really about, does he believe he can win? It's not really even about what damage does this do to Anthony Joshua's reputation if he doesn't win. Because this fight is so one-sided, I think the question we really should be asking of ourselves is, how dangerous to Jake Paul's health is this fight? Because this is the crux of why boxing is risky. This is the crux of why there are sanctioning bodies. This is why fights need to be checked through governing bodies to make sure that they are a competitive matchup. And we will talk about that before the end of this video, these sanctioning bodies. Because this isn't an exhibition. This is an actual sanctioned professional heavyweight fight with a weight clause, which is weird. But anyway, I'm going to phrase it this way for the YouTube algorithm. But the question that's really been in my head since I heard anything about this is, can Joshua actually unalive Jake Paul? I know that's a weird word to use, but it's for YouTube. Can he cause him such irreversible damage that he should never have done this? The answer is that he absolutely can. We've seen people much better than Jake Paul have permanent damage after fighting opponents that were the same size as them, that weren't as massively outclassed as Jake Paul is going to be by Anthony Joshua. And it's chilling to talk about this, but I have to say that, and it's a cringe cliche saying, but your health is your damn wealth, people. There isn't an amount of money that you could offer someone who's unwell for their health back. And once it's gone, it's gone. And I have to tell you that this is unbelievably dangerous for Jake Paul. I mean, I'm not even thinking about the fact that I respect the guy for taking the challenge or the risk or anything like that. I just kind of don't think he should be allowed to do it. Now, look, I know there's mismatches in boxing a lot. I know that there's journeymen and they're there for a reason, but I think people underestimate the journeyman. A lot of journeymen are very, very good at what they do. They have acquired a set of skills that allow them to get into the ring and make things at least safe for themselves. They know when to take a knee. They know how to move around and not get too badly hurt. It's only when you're in there with a real phenom, like AJ was early in his career, that they're getting taken out really ruthlessly. Most of the time, these guys are quite good at getting in there, fiddling their way through the rounds, and then getting out for another fight in a couple of weeks because they don't get stopped. There aren't too many guys operating in professional boxing that are going to get absolutely annihilated. And Jake Paul is okay. I'm not saying he's not a decent level now. He might be like an area title level. I'm not exactly sure what he is because I've not seen him fight an actual active professional boxer that's the same size as him. But that's exactly the point. Because he hasn't done that, because we don't know exactly where he's at, it means that this shouldn't be sanctioned. This shouldn't be allowed because this is fundamentally dangerous. Not only has he never fought at the highest level, he's never fought at the highest level as a heavyweight. He's never felt genuine heavyweight power before. His body isn't accustomed to it. His skill set certainly isn't good enough that if this is the AJ that I know and have known and is anything close to resembling him, he's not going to get absolutely annihilated. There is a real danger here of brain damage. There is a real danger here of his life changing forever. I don't know why people don't get this, but boxing's not a joke, man. This is really dangerous stuff. And I guess that leads us to the final part of this video, which is, why is this fight happening? Why does it exist? Well, it wouldn't exist unless this was an actual sanctioned fight. Because at the end of the day, Anthony Joshua's not going to go and fight an exhibition against Jake Paul where he's not maybe... I mean, look, when you look at the definition of exhibition, it basically means there's no obligation on either fighter to go in there and try for a knockout. It means that they don't, oftentimes they don't even bloody bother scoring them. You just get in there, you move around, there's no official winner, that's it. But because Anthony Joshua still wants to continue his pro career, because he still wants that Tyson Fury fight, he needs to be unshackled when he goes in there to go and do what he wants to do, to go in there and show how much better he is than this guy. And that is why this fight shouldn't have been sanctioned, because this is dangerous for Jake Paul. Honestly, the lack of evidence we have that Jake Paul can get in there and will be okay is absolutely troubling. The Florida State Athletic Commission, this is embarrassing. It's really, really embarrassing. And look, to me, when someone asks me, because I get asked all the time about Jake Paul, I don't have any problem with him doing his thing. Go and box, mate. Go and make loads of money. Pick opponents that you can beat. Dupe the public into thinking you're better than you are. All that. I really don't care. It really doesn't bother me. But this right here is a problem. The fact that an active heavyweight fighter, an Anthony Joshua, who still has ambitions of competing at some kind of a high level against someone like a Fury, probably will still want to try and fight for a world title. If, for example, that WBO title, which I'm going to be talking about in another video, is now owned by Fabio Wardley. That's changed the heavyweight landscape entirely. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to become a heavyweight champion again, is what I'm trying to say. The only thing that keeps boxing as a credible sport is that credible matchups get made. All this does is add fuel to the fire of what the people who criticize the sport say, that it's corrupt, that the governing bodies are messed up and confusing and they just do a load of rubbish, basically. And not to sound like too much of a boxing snob or anything like that, but there's just absolutely nothing poetic about this matchup, which is what the sport is all about for me. The sport for me is about great stories, high-level competition, the best going at it and trying to find out who the best is, people coming from absolute rags to riches. There's nothing better than all of that. It's what makes the sport so special. And this is just so vulgar to me. You know, the only reason this exists is because of money. And when things are done purely because they make money, that is when there's nothing good left. There's no artistry to it. There's no credibility to it. It's like comparing some shitty pop album that sold millions of copies to an absolute masterpiece from some old school artist or something like that. It's like recently I heard that apparently they're now writing movie scripts. They're dumbing them down so that people can go on their phone at the same time as watching it, basically diluting the whole experience, reducing the quality just so that more people can do other things at the same time. It kind of reminds me of that. It's like there's something so fat cat money grabbing about it. I can't explain exactly what I'm trying to say. I'm struggling to articulate this, but it's just not why I love sport. And like, people would then say to me, I suppose, why are you covering this at all? Well, I'll cover anything that involves things that are relevant for the current professional boxing scene. And one of our top heavyweight boxers going across and fighting Jake Paul is highly relevant. Even Mike Tyson, who was such a incredible figure in the sport of boxing when he was in his prime, that's relevant. And especially because, you know, I feel like someone needs to speak when there's so many people out there that are going to spin narratives after that one. But this is how I feel about this fight. I've spoken my truth about it. On the one hand, you can say, look, mate, it's not that deep. AJ's going to go and get his payday. He's going to smash Jake Paul on the way to doing it. Don't worry about it. But on the other hand, I just think if this is the standard that we're setting for the sport, that we're always going to prioritize money over anything else, we're not worried about the level of competition across from us, then that's an issue. I suppose you could counter that by saying, well, Anthony Joshua's on his way out of the sport anyway, but the reality for me is that he isn't technically retired. I think this sort of thing is for retired fighters. It is for fighters that want to go and do exhibitions and have a bit of a, you know, whatever. Do your thing, fine, yeah. Like, there's loads of people doing that, but when you actually sanction this as a professional fight, that's when I've got an issue with it, and that's why I have a problem with it. And as I say, if Anthony Joshua doesn't absolutely crush him within a couple of rounds, if he isn't punch perfect, if he doesn't get out of there totally unscathed, this could cause him damage beyond repair. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you smash a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Let me know what you think about this fight or this circus, whatever you want to call it, in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And as I always say, on to the next one.